So you know the difference between a granny knot and a reef knot? You should. Welcome to The Ageless Runner. I'm Ralph. Hey, before we talk about knots and lacing in running shoes, please consider subscribing to my channel by clicking that subscribe icon down in the corner of this video. Thank you so much. So one important aspect of running is not only keeping your shoes on, but making sure your heels don't slip, you don't have any pressure points on your feet. And over the years, I've come across some knots and some lacing techniques that I've used from time to time, depending on the shoes and depending on the socks I'm wearing, that have helped me overcome issues like laces becoming untied, my heel slipping, and the top of my foot hurting. And I thought I would share some of those with you today. And the first thing is, do you tie a granny knot or a reef knot? Now the reason I ask is that I often have a problem with my shoes becoming untied. That's most irritating when you're running and you got to stop, kneel down, fix it, and you lose time. And when you get to be my age, bending down it can be a little more problematic. So I first discovered the reef knot long before I started running. I used to have these nicer pair of dress shoes sometimes I wear to work. And the laces, I don't know what they were coated with, but it made them kind of stiff and a little bit slippery, and they're always coming untied. So I decided I would just tie a double knot. Well, now I look like I'm a guy at work, I'm a grade schooler because I got this double knot on my nice dress shoes. So I eventually happened upon the reef knot. And the reef knot, when you tie it correctly, actually greatly reduces the likelihood of your shoes unlacing. That kind of fixed my problem. And then when I started running, I started seeing the reef knot also mentioning in some of the running articles about a technique for reducing unlacing when you're running. Typically, when we learn to tie our shoes, we tie the granny knot. Well, there's a difference between a granny knot and a reef knot, even though they're very similar to be tied. I'm showing you a picture that kind of illustrates that you can use to determine if you're tying a granny knot or a reef knot. And the key thing is to look at the orientation of the loops of your laces. If the loops are perpendicular to your foot, you're tying a reef knot. But they're off to an angle, you know, if they're kind of skewed, then you're tying a granny knot. So in this particular pair of shoes here, I tied a granny knot. You can see how the laces are not perpendicular to the shoe as they are in the reef knot. Now tying the reef knot is very easy. I'm going to tell you the trick up front, then I'll show you, and that is to reverse the direction of your second loop when you're tying your shoes. So let me show you. So tying the reef knot is pretty straightforward. As I said, the key to doing it, if you're tying a granny, is to reverse the second loop. So when I tie my granny knot, I take the laces, take the right lace over the left, tighten it, make a loop, and then typically when I was taught my granny knot, I would go around the back of the lace towards the back of the shoe and tie it and end up with that typical granny knot where you can see the laces are kind of at a diagonal. But let me leave the first knot alone, make my loop, but this time I'm going to go around the front of the lace towards the front of the shoe and tie it. So I've got that perpendicular orientation of the loops, so now I know I've got that reef knot tied correctly. Cinch it up, go out and run, and that will greatly reduce the likelihood of your shoes becoming unlaced. So again, the key to making that reef knot is simply reverse the direction of that second loop. Whatever you're doing today, do the first tie like you always do today, but on the second loop, go the opposite direction. If you go around to the front, well then go around to the back. If you go around to the back and get a granny, then go around to the front, and you're up with a reef knot. Again, look for that orientation of the loops of the laces being perpendicular to your foot. Then you know you have a reef knot. So a problem often experienced by runners is heel slippage. It can depend on the shoes you're wearing, the socks you're wearing. Most shoes are okay with me, but I do have a little bit of an issue with my trail running Saucony X's shoes. And I've learned years ago about a technique called the runner's loop that uses this extra eyelet that's on the top. Now you've got this extra eyelet up here. There are two up the top there. Did you ever wonder what that second one's for? I'm going to show you, and it's a great lacing technique to minimize heel slippage. So I said this second technique involves using this extra eyelet on the outside of the shoe. And basically to tie the runner's loop, you're going to take your loop, your shoestring, and you're going to feed it through that second eyelet. Feed it through the second eyelet and leave a little loop there. Just leave a little loop. Do the same thing on the other side. Take the shoestring, feed it through the second eyelet. Again, leave a little loop. So now I've got two loops on either side. You're going to crisscross the leads, and you're going to take the left shoestring lead and feed it through the right loop, and the right shoestring lead and feed it through the left loop. And then you're going to pull these tight. Now you may find you have to lift up on the laces to get them tight, but pull them tight, and then of course, do your reef knot. Tie it. So by using that second eyelet and tying it in this manner, you are cinching your heel more closely to the back of your shoe, which prevent your heels lifting as you run. It's a great technique. I use it on my Saucony X's. Now you may find that because you need a little extra shoestring length to do that loop, you might need longer laces. I've had some shoes where they were a little too short and I had to get longer ones. But most running shoes have ample shoestring length and you should be able to tie that with no difficulty. Now, the last thing I'd like to show you is to provide relief on the top of your foot. I have high arches, a high instep, and depending on the shoe and the socks I'm wearing, I can get some pressure on the top of my foot. And so there's a very interesting technique where you actually skip a set of eyelets as far as crossover lacing. I'm showing you the picture of it. So this lacing technique is very easy to use. You'd want to start this technique right below your sore point or your pressure point that's on the top of your foot. So you'll skip a set of eyelets for lacing. You'll simply pass the shoestring along the side on 2 sequential eyelets and then start the crisscross pattern again. Then when you get all laced up, you just want to tie your reef knot at the top. So that will help relieve some of the pressure on the top of your foot. Hey, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Please, if you haven't already, consider subscribing. I love to continue talking to you and sharing what I enjoy and learn about running. Thanks again for watching. Happy running.